It's a beautiful Tuesday morning, a rainy Tuesday morning, or perhaps should I say it's still drizzling here. Good morning and thank you for joining us on Morning Spring. This is Western Spring Television. Emeka Daniel is my name. It's a pleasure to have you join us once again on this program where we start the day with newspaper reviews, looking at the newspaper headlines of various dailies in the nation. And then, of course, afterwards, we dive into critical conversations with stakeholders. And that's what we do here every weekday from Mondays to Fridays on WSTV. Thank you once again for joining us on Morning Spring. Yesterday, I started the show by congratulating the D Tigers, our female basketball team, for their victory, winning the Afro-Basket competition, championship for the 5th time, making history as the first nation to win the Afro-Basket 5 times in a row. And I was here congratulating them. And I also said I was trying to, play with some mathematical proportions when I said, when did the D Tigers won the Afro-Basket Championship, when the Super Falcons, last week it was all about the Super Falcons. They won the WAFCON the 10th time, and Mr. President gave them $100,000 each. So yesterday I was like, now that the D Tigers have done the same thing, something similar, by winning the Afro-Basket the 5th time, perhaps I was saying maybe the president will give them, let's say, around $50,000 each. But guess what? Mr. President did it again. Yes, Mr. President gave out $100,000 cash each to the D Tigers as well. So what are we saying? Congratulations to the D Tigers. They got $100,000 each. Then the technical team, the 11-member technical team, also got $50,000 each, together with national honors. Just what it did for the Super Falcons. What is good for the goose, they say, is good for the gander. So once again, congratulations to the D Tigers on your victory and, of course, on your bonuses. It's your time to shine. I guess this time only God knows what Nigerians will say, because a lot of people have been waiting. Recall, even Femi and I talked about it here on the show when the Super Falcons got $100,000 each. That what if the D Tigers win? What if they emerge victorious? Will the president do the same thing? Perhaps the president was reading our minds saying, don't worry, relax, Nigerians, I can do it. And guess what? Mr. President did it again. So once again, congratulations to the D Tigers. Thank you so much once again for joining us. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we go straight to the newspaper review segment. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We move straight to the front page of the dailies this morning. We start from the Daily Trust. On the Daily Trust newspaper, WAEC records worst results in 5 years. WAEC records worst results in 5 years. With a rider, parents, others blame CBT for poor performance. Parents, others blame CBT for poor performance. CBT, that's the computer-based testing system. Yesterday, the West African Examination Council, WAEC, for those of you who are not Nigerians viewing this, the West African Examination Council released the results of the last, senior secondary school certificate examinations. And we understand it was the worst performance in 5 years. Quite unfortunate. About 1.9 million plus registered and took the exam. And we understand about 754,000 thereabouts were able to secure credit passes in 5 subjects, including English and mathematics, and which is a sharp decline from previous performances in previous years. Now, parents are attributing the poor performance to the CBT testing system. Some time ago, we talked about that here, that are we really ready to go digital in all areas, including education? When WAEC said we're going to make everything digital, even JAM also said everything will be automated, and we talked about it right here. Are we really ready? How prepared are the students? I mean, some of those students, some indigent students who do not even have access to computer systems. Some of them cannot even operate a computer system. So sometimes they get shortchanged. They might be smart, they might be book smart, but if you're not exposed to a computer system and you're using it for the first time to write an examination, no matter how smart you are, it will or it may affect your performance. And that's what the parents are saying right here. Away from the banner headline, still on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. Again, Tinubu rewards athletes with 150 million naira each, national honors. Again, Tinubu rewards athletes with 150 million naira each, national honors. Talking about the D Tigress right there. Once again, congratulations. It's your time to shine. So the D Tigress have received the same reward just like the Super Falcons. So no one is complaining right now since they've also gotten the same treatment. Besides that, we have residents, motorists stranded as flood hits Lagos. Residents, motorists stranded as flood hits Lagos. Talking about the floods, the rains are here again, and a lot of places might start experiencing flood. Then Lagos, especially Lagos Island. I mean, for those who live in Lagos, who brag about staying on the island, whenever it rains and there is flood, you go to places like Lekki, Admiralty Way, and you see the flood and you start wondering, so what are you guys bragging about? The whole place is flooded. You can barely drive out. So that's the situation right there. Quite unfortunate for Lagos, my dear hometown, being flooded as a result of the rains. Away from that, ex-soldiers protest over unpaid entitlements. Ex-soldiers protest over unpaid entitlements. It's quite unfortunate when we have our ex-military men protesting over their pensions, over their entitlements, rather. It's quite worrisome. The other day, not too long ago, we had retired police officers protesting in various parts of the country over their unpaid pension or inclusion in a particular pension scheme, which they claim is exploitative. They were protesting. We saw pictures of retired police officers standing under the rain, protesting. Now we have ex-military men. What exactly is going on here? Ex-soldiers protesting over unpaid entitlement. You might want to read up that story on page 7 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Away from that, still on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Bandits raid Zamfara villages, abduct 24. Bandits raid Zamfara villages, abduct 24. So talking about insecurity in Zamfara state. And below that, at the bottom strip, day-old baby stolen from Ekiti hospital. Day-old baby stolen from Ekiti hospital. You'll find that story on page 21. On page 21. Day-old baby stolen. That's quite unfortunate. Just imagine the trauma the mother of that child will be going through right now. Just imagine rather, giving birth to a child and the baby is stolen. How do you explain that? Quite unfortunate. Away from that, troops kill 17 Boko Haram terrorists in Borno. Troops kill 17 Boko Haram terrorists in Borno. And finally, from the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning, Ojulari surfaces at public function. Ojulari surfaces at public function. You find that story on page 6. We'll look more into that. Ojulari, that's talking about Bashir Bayo Ojulari, the NNPCL Group Chief Executive Officer. Over the weekend, rumors surfaced that he was actually abducted and by the DSS and the EFCC and forced to sign his resignation letter. Later, the EFCC came up and said, no, there was nothing like that. He wasn't forced to sign any resignation letter. But there's a twist to it. You might want to just stay tuned as we'll be looking deeply into that after the newspaper review segment. And that'll be all from the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Our next up is the Punch newspaper. On the Punch newspaper this morning, Ghana, Baraje, McCarthy in tight race for PDP chair. Ghana, Baraje McCarthy in tight race for PDP chair. That's talking about countdown to 2027. Below that, we have a rider. Neck divided over Damagun's fate. Wike plots counter move as PDP convention drama unfolds. Wike plots counter move as PDP convention drama unfolds. Quite interesting, talking about the PDP. You find a story on page 2. Damagun is currently the acting chairman, but there's so much controversy. They're going to have their convention, and we have people like Professor Jerry Garner, founding member, Baraje McCarthy, in tight race for that position of chairmanship of the party. You might want to read up details of that story in the Punch newspaper today. You find that on page 2. Away from that, moving to the top strip, states versus discos. Power cuts begin over tariff impasse. States versus discos. That's talking about electricity distribution companies. Power cuts begin over tariff impasse. Below that, there's a rider. Let me see if I can take that. States defiant vow to dismantle disco's grip amid Enugu blackout. So quite unfortunate. We see here, states defiant vow to dismantle disco's grip amid Enugu blackout. You find that story on page 19. Away from that, Afrexim Bank leads $4 billion refinancing loan for Dangote refinery. Afrexim Bank leads $4 billion refinancing loan for Dangote refinery. You find that story on page 22. Arias crisis. Protesting ex-soldiers pressure FG with Friday deadline. Arias crisis. Protesting ex-soldiers pressure federal government with Friday deadline. You find that story on page 7. Talking about protesting ex-soldiers, they're protesting concerning their unpaid, entitlement arrears, pension arrears, and they've given the federal government till Friday. That's a deadline, that's an ultimatum. Let's see how that plays out. You might want to read up that story on page 7 of the Punch newspaper. Away from that, I'm still on the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning. Tinubu gifts the Tigress $100,000 each. Flats, OON. Tinubu gifts the Tigress $100,000 each. Flats, OON. That's National Award Officer of the Order of the Niger. You'll find a story on page 39. And moving to the bottom strip, FAAC to recover 101 billion naira from customs after audit reports. FAAC to recover 101 billion naira from customs after audit report. You find a story on page 20. $160 million fraud. Vietnamese police arrest 2 Nigerians, 5 accomplices. $160 million fraud. Vietnamese police arrest 2 Nigerians, 5 accomplices. You find the story on page 4. And finally, from the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning, we have Olubadan. Ladoja awaits Makinde's nod after council nomination. Olubadan. Ladoja awaits Makinde's nod after council nomination. You'll find that story on page 7. Recall that Rashid Ladoja has been nominated by the council to be the next Olubadan, and is simply awaiting the approval of the governor, Seyi Makinde, in that regard. And that'll be all from the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning. Next, we take a look at the Guardian newspaper. Let's take a look at some of the stories on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Desperation heightens as 2027 campaign begins 15 months ahead. Desperation heightens as 2027 campaign begins 15 months ahead, you find a story on page 6. I talked about that yesterday. Here we are in 2025 talking about 2027 elections. It shouldn't be so, but that's the reality right now in Nigeria. Our politicians and leaders are preoccupied with, campaigning and, of course, positioning themselves for 2027 elections. We should be talking about good governance and not politics at this time. Unfortunately, that's the position we found ourselves in. Our leaders are talking about 2027. So governance has to wait for politics. Quite unfortunate. You might read of that story on the Guardian newspaper this morning. Away from that, below that, you see pictures of top leaders in the nation. We see President Bola Ahmed Tinubu right there. Beside that, we have Atiku Abubakar. We have Peter Obi. Then you have the picture of, who's this? Kwankwaso. Yes, Rabi Musa Kwankwaso. Then, of course, Yakubu right there on the front page. These are the top runners, especially Tinubu, Atiku, and Peter Obi right there. Then, of course, Kwankwaso, you cannot, you can never forget Kwankwaso. He has a strong followership as well, the leader of the Kwankwasia movement. So who knows what might happen. Recently, he has been meeting with Mr. President at the Villa. Some people have said perhaps maybe the president is trying to bring him in as his running mate. So who knows how that will play out. Away from that, still on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. 2027, Southwest PDP kicks as Wike backs Tinubu, gives fresh conditions for peace. 2027, Southwest PDP rather kicks as Wike backs Tinubu, gives fresh conditions for peace. You can read up that story on page 3. Yes, Wike, the FCT minister, who is still a PDP member, but working for an APC government and also backing the president. Some people are just, some Nigerians will say confused. Who should we believe? Where does Wike really stand here? But that's the FCT minister for you. Wike himself, the strongman of PDP. You did not hear that from me, right? Away from that, petrol soars to 955 naira per litre as NNPCL marketers hike prices. Petrol soars to 955 naira per litre as NNPCL marketers hike prices. You find a story on page 3. And beside that, we have another story. APC alleges El-Rufai, Atiku constitute threats to Nigeria's peace, unity. Here we go again. APC alleges El-Rufai, Atiku constitute threats to Nigeria's peace, unity. You find that story on page 3. Now the APC is accusing Atiku and El-Rufai, as being threats to Nigeria's unity. Similar to the same thing, what they did to Professor Patutomi when he proposed the, what's it called again? The Big Tent Coalition. Yes, the shadow government. The federal government came out, the DSS came out saying, oh, we have security reports that this will be a matter of national security. Patutomi, he actually went to court. I'm saying, Patutomi, you can talk about this, you can hold meetings, you can grant radio and television interviews because this is a matter of national security. You're trying to work against Nigeria's peace and unity. And that's what the APC is saying right now about El-Rufai and Atiku, threats to national peace and unity. You might want to read up that story on page 3 of the Punch newspaper this morning. Away from that, still on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Nigeria's oil output hits 1.78 million barrels per day. On the Guardian, we're still on the Guardian, I beg your pardon. Nigeria's oil import hits 1.78 million barrels per day in July. Reduces first half $5.3 billion revenue shortfall. Nigeria's oil output hit 1.78 million barrels per day in July, reduces first half $5.3 billion revenue shortfall. You find the story on page 6. That's a slight improvement in oil production in Nigeria. Below that, Tinubu rewards the Tigress with national honors, $100,000 each. Tinubu rewards the Tigress with national honors, $100,000 each. You find that on the panorama page 2. Then finally, from the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning, obedience right Obi, complain of exclusion in coalition moves. Obedience right Obi, that's interesting. Complain of exclusion in coalition moves. You find a story on page 7. And that'll be all from the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Next, we take a look at the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. On the Nigerian Tribune newspaper this morning, crisis in PDP, over for now. That's according to Wiki. Crisis in PDP over for now. That's coming from Nyesom Wike, the FCT minister. With riders, restates his support for Tinubu, says his predecessor revoked Uniabuja land. Disregard Wike's comments on party's affairs. PDP professionals urge members. Disregard Wike's comments on party's affairs. PDP professionals urge members. Quite interesting. And below that, insist decision on Southeast Congress stands. Talking about party politics there and the PDP. You can read up that story on page 15 of the Nigerian Tribune. Away from that, moving to the top strip, we have Channel FAC windfall into food security. Channel FAC windfall into food security. Human capital development experts tell FG states with a rider urge them to privatize healthcare education. You find a story on page 6. That's the FAC telling the federal government to channel FAC windfall to food security and human capital development. Away from that, Olubadan in council endorses Ladoja as 44th Olubadan of Ibadan land. Olubadan in council endorses Ladoja as 44th Olubadan of Ibadan land. You found that story on page 3. And away from that, armed men on motorbikes kill 11, kidnap 70 in Zamfara. Armed men on motorbikes kill 11, kidnap 70 in Zamfara. You find a story on page 5. Talking about insecurity in Zamfara state, rising insecurity despite promises and of course despite statement by the National Security Advisor, Malam Nuhu Ribadu. I do hope, can someone please share this story with the NSA? He might be very busy, he might have missed this with the National Security Advisor who believes that all is well. We have rising insecurity in Zamfara state. Dear Malam Nuhu Ribadu, the National Security Advisor who believes Nigeria is safer now, please address this. Thank you. Away from that, below that, we have another story. Lagos residents cry out as flood sacks communities. Lagos residents cry out as flood sacks communities. You'll find that story on page 5. We are still on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Below that, we have Women's Rights Group decries attack on female police officers. Women's Rights Group decries attack on female police officers. You'll find the story on page 3. And below that, under health, we have World's first gonorrhea vaccination program to be rolled out in England. World's first gonorrhea vaccination program to be rolled out in England. You find that story on page 4. That's a good one right there. That's a great one. Gonorrhea vaccination, quite impressive. That's a milestone achievement, and that should be rolled out in England very soon. So congratulations to that scientific breakthrough right there. Right at the middle of the page, we have it. We have pictures right there. Like falcons, Tinubu rewards the Tigress with $100,000 each. National honors. Quite interesting. Like falcons, Tinubu rewards the Tigers with $100,000. And of course, national honors. The Super Falcons got $100,000 each, and now Mr. President has done it again, giving the D Tigers $100,000 each. What more can we say? Congratulations. All right, away from that, still on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Plot against Ojulari to undermine NNPCL reform, CCDI. Plot against Ojulari to undermine NNPCL reform. You find that story on page 3. We'll look more into that in the course of the program this morning. Away from that, WASC result, 38.32% obtained credit in 5 subjects, including English, Math. WASC result, 38.32% obtained credit in 5 subjects, including English, Math. Below that, we have a rider, results of 192,089 candidates withheld. And finally, from the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning, Ekiti 2026, Oyebanji at APC Secretariat formally declares intention to run for second term. Ekiti 2026, Oyebanji at APC Secretariat formally declares intention to run for second term. You'll find that story on page 16. And that'll be all from the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. That also brings us to a conclusion of the newspaper review segment on the show this morning. We'll take a quick break, and when we return, we dive into critical conversations. So many twists playing out, talking about the NNPCL, the presidency, the DSS, CFCC saga. We'll be looking more into that. You do not want to miss the next segment. Please stay with us.